Claudia and I am a dog nutritionist. Today, in this video, we're going to talk about how to pick good kibble. And I know some of you might think, I'm a dog nutritionist, I might not want to feed kibble, and that's not true. Because every single client that I've came across has their own needs and has their own wants. And I'm not really here to change someone's opinion. I'm here to just help someone. So in today's video, we're going to speak about a couple of kibbles. I'm not going to name any brands because I don't want to expose any brands, but I simply want to teach you how to make a good decision in trying to find the best kibble for your dog. And obviously the first thing to do would be to turn the bag around, look at the ingredient list and see if your dog is really going to thrive on this kibble or if it's just going to be eating McDonald's every single day. So let's get started. So I have a couple of kibbles here and you're going to see right here the ingredient list and the feeding per day. We are currently going to feed a 12 kg dog, so that's going to be our standard for the video. And we're going to look from the best kibble to the worst kibble. And then at the very end, we're going to have a look at the different types of kibbles and answer some of your questions as well that were asked on Instagram. So as you can see on this kibble here, I have it in front of me on a piece of paper. You can see that the first ingredient is fresh beef. That's what you really want in your kibble. You want the first few ingredients to be identifiable. So something like meat, something like organs, gizzards, anything to do with animal proteins. And that's kind of the best standard that you can go for. So we have 60% fresh beef, and then that includes 42% beef meat, beef heart, beef lung, beef tripe, and beef liver. So we have a really good starting point in this kibble because the first, 5 ingredients, we can say the first 5 ingredients are meat. It's not really any legumes, it's not any carbs, fillers, it's none of that. And then after, we can have a look at dried carrot, dried apple, millet, krill, coconut oil, and nettle. You can see that this is a very clean ingredient list. And obviously with each kibble, you have to think about the vitamins that they add to the kibble at the very end. So of course, the vitamins will be synthetic, but when you talk about kibble in general, there's not really many that you can find without synthetic ingredients because any heat alterations to the kibble will destroy some of the nutrition, so they have to add back the synthetic vitamins. So then, with this bag, for a 15 kg bag, you're paying around 75 euros. And that would be around 132 grams per day for a 12 kg dog, which would come to up to 70 cents per day to feed the dog, which is not too bad, but it's obviously not on the cheapest side. But when it comes down to quality over quantity, we sometimes have to kind of think, should we feed our dog good quality kibble and just pay that slightly bit extra? Because even some bad quality kibbles are not great and they are very expensive. So the next one, as you can see here, it's a very long list, but it's not really a bad list, we would call it. You can see it's 75% fresh duck meat, but then you have a lot of vegetables and a lot of additives. For this bag, you would pay 80 euros per 10 kg, which is slightly bit more expensive, I would say, than the last one, but it's not on the top of my list, I would say. So you would feed 168 grams per day for a 12 kg dog, so that would be around 1.35 euros per day. And as you can see, only the first ingredient is fresh duck meat. I don't see any organs in this, which I would love to see organs in this, obviously. So you have sweet potato, you have banana, artichoke, chicory, alfalfa, apples, pumpkin, cranberry, and many, many more in these ingredients. Obviously, it's not on the top of my list, but it is not one of the worst kibbles, I would call it. So next one we would go to, as you can see the ingredient list right here too. We have organic fresh chicken, which is a great ingredient, but there's only 25% of it. which we are kind of going to the middle range of the kibble right now. And then you have rice protein, whole rice, organic millet, whole oats. And then you have fresh turkey. So you can see all the rice and the oats and the millet would kind of add up to be above the chicken, in my opinion, which is not really great, because for a dog that we want it to thrive, we want it to have as much good protein as possible. So this wouldn't be my favorite kibble. And as you can see, after you have minerals, which is kind of the synthetic vitamins. And then you have pork gravy, chicken fat, and then loads of vegetables. I would say this is the middle range kibble. You would pay around 52 euros per 7 kg bag, which is kind of expensive, to be honest with you, for that kind of bag. And then you have 161 grams per day for a 12 kg dog. So it would be around 1.20 euros per day that you would spend on your dog to feed it. I'm not too fond of this kibble, but let's move on to the worst one. So as you can see here, we have the next kibble, and the first ingredient in it is tapioca. We don't like that. We don't want that. We don't want anything to be a big filler. And obviously tapioca in itself kind of binds all the ingredients, but we don't want it to be the first ingredient. The first ingredients should be meat, and then we can think about tapioca or any other flour. So we have tapioca, dehydrated duck protein. There's no percentages on this, so we don't really know how many there is. And duck protein on itself, you know, it's not just duck breast or duck liver, it's duck protein. So it could be anything from the duck, in my opinion. Next, you have vegetable fibers. You don't really know what type of vegetables it is. So if your dog has any allergies to vegetables, I wouldn't suggest this kibble at all. Then we have hydrolyzed poultry proteins, which is a very vague way of saying that the protein has been broken down to such a small percentage that it wouldn't react with your dog's gut. But in my opinion, it still will if your dog has issues with, let's say, chicken or turkey. So this is not good either. Then you have animal fats. We don't know what type of animal. It could be any animal fat that was the cheapest for them to have at that specific moment to add into the kibble for it to smell nice for the dog and taste nice for the dog. Then we have beet pulp, which is basically sugar in the kibble. We have fish oil. We don't really know what type of fish. It could be sardines, it could be salmon. Then we have minerals, which is vitamins. Soya oil, which, you know, we would rather it to be like flaxseed oil. Flaxseed oil is a lot better for us. You have psyllium husks and more ingredients to it. To be honest with you, it says nearly 90 euros per 14 kg bag. I wouldn't buy that for my dog, in my opinion. And then you would feed 141 grams per day, and that's basically €1 per day, we would call it. It's not on the more expensive side, but in my opinion, there are better kibbles out there. Let's look at the worst of all the kibbles that I have found so far. And as you can see on the ingredient list here, first ingredient is cereals. This could be anything from wheat, barley, oats, corn, any of those bad fillers that are just the cheapest kind of fillers you can get, that the company will get just to make the kibble. And then you have meat and animal derivatives, including 4% beef. And they're not specifying what type of beef it is. It could be beef ears, it could be beef hoofs, the tail, it could be anything really. But out of that 4%, what are the other percentages? So basically, when you have a company that would create this type of kibble, they would pick the cheapest offcuts from the meat. It could be feet, it could be the gizzards that, you know, are not going in the good quality kibble. It could be the eyes, it could be the brain, the ears, the head, you know, it could be anything, and we don't really know what it is. You have oils and fats. We don't know what type of oils and fats it is. It could even be oils from a restaurant that have discarded all their oils and it's sprayed on the kibble for the kibble to smell nice for your dog. Then you have various sugars, which obviously that can feed yeast infections in dogs as well, and it's not good at all. And then you have vegetables, which includes 1.25% dried peas. which is one of the worst vegetables you can add into kibble as well. Why don't we add an apple? Why don't we add something else that has more meaning to it? But as you can see, for a 3 kg bag, you're technically paying 3.3 euros for a 3 kg bag, which is very cheap. And, I can tell you from this bag that it comes from a supermarket. Supermarkets don't have the greatest kibbles, so it's always best to turn the bag around, look at the ingredients, and see if the kibble is good for your dog. And I usually try to say to clients as well that if you turn the bag around, you look at the ingredients, and you cannot pronounce an ingredient, it's not good for your dog. So you can see you would feed 250 grams per day for your dog, which is a lot more than all the other kibbles, which means that this kibble has been extruded so much that it has lost a lot of its nutrition. There's going to be a lot of synthetic vitamins adding to this kibble, and your dog is going to have a lot of issues with it. And you're technically paying 30 cents per day for the kibble, which would be great if the kibble was good quality, but it's not. So next thing we can talk about is kibble toppers. So with any kibble, whether it's good or bad, we want to let our dogs thrive on the kibble. So what we can do is we can add toppers to your kibble that are very beneficial to your dog. You can add sardines in water from a can. You can add bone broth. You can add kefir. You can add any of those, even a raw egg or a cooked egg if you're more comfortable with it, just to bring out any of the nutrition in the kibble. So with any type of kibble, before we move on to the different types of kibble and the questions, you can see that with extruded kibbles, which is the ones that go over high heat temperatures multiple times, and any other kibble that's dried, it loses about 80% moisture. So you kind of have to account for that. And a lot of the times it's best to add water or bone broth to the kibble to account for all the water that has been lost. Because if you just feed your dog kibble, your dog is going to be in a constant state of dehydration, which can make their skin very tight. It can make them pant a lot more. They might be drinking a ton of more water. Obviously, fresh is best, but some people prefer to feed kibble. It's easier for them. They're unable to do any of the other things, and that's okay. But what you can do is just add toppers onto it. So let's talk about the different types of kibble. And after that, we are technically already answering the question at the very end that people have asked. A couple of people asked the same question, so it's technically like one question that we have. But as you can see on the big list here on the screen, we have different types of kibble. We have extruded kibble, we have cold pressed, dehydrated, air dried, freeze dried, and semi-moist. Those are technically the couple of types of kibble that you have. Sometimes you have ones that are kind of in between some of them, but with extruded kibble, it goes with high temperatures. It's cooked with over 200 degrees Celsius over multiple periods of time. And often it loses a lot of its nutrients and needs rehydration because it's extremely dry. And obviously the texture is like kibble, it's dry and crunchy. With cold pressed and dehydrated, you kind of have very similar temperatures. It would be between 60 and 80 degrees Celsius that it's being cooked at. And it's cooked on very low heat, as you can see, over a longer period of time. So it's preserved better, but I would suggest with cold pressed and dehydrated to still rehydrate the kibble with some water and bone broth. And the texture is kind of powdery and firm at the same time. Then you have air dried. It's usually cooked at around 40 degrees Celsius, which is kind of a hot weather, I would call it, in a cold country. It has about 10 to 15% moisture. It's very good at preserving its ingredients. You can rehydrate it if you want to, and I would suggest to rehydrate it. And a lot of the times it's kind of like a jerky, chewy style kibble. Then you have freeze dried, which I would call it on like the top of the best, basically. They freeze dry it in a vacuum and then dry it in the vacuum too. It's excellent at preserving its nutrients. It's always recommended to rehydrate it because it'll kind of flake a little bit once you're touching it. But freeze dried would be on the top of the list. Obviously, some countries don't have freeze dried, so then I would suggest the air dried and cold pressed. But then the next one, we have semi-moist. So it is usually cooked. A lot of the time it can be cooked at high temperatures, unfortunately. And then a lot of humectants go on top of it to make it semi-moist. It has around 30% moisture, but often the nutrients preserving is really bad in it because it is cooked at a high temperature at the very start. It doesn't need rehydration, and it usually has a soft, sticky kibble. So that's kind of the different types of kibble that we have here. And as you can see, the questions that were asked here, the two of the main questions, is I feed the darf, which is the cold pressed food, and is darf or cold pressed better than any other kibble? So in my opinion, if you can't get your hands on freeze dried, then darf or cold pressed is definitely better than the dry extruded kibble because it keeps a lot more nutrients in the kibble, and that way you are giving your dog the best of the best that you can at that specific moment. Obviously, then you have raw and you have home cooked, which is, even higher on the list. But when we're just talking about kibble, if you can get your hands on freeze dried or cold pressed or air dried, those are kind of the three that I would recommend the most, then definitely go for those. So let's talk about DVM, which is dilated cardiomyopathy, which is an issue with the heart in a lot of the breeds. And as you can see from the picture here beside me, there was a study done years ago by vets, I would call it, that they just tested dogs on grain-free diets, and then they figured at the very end that it's causing the dilated cardiomyopathy. But in reality, it is not the case. They haven't done any dogs on a grain-filled kibble in that study, which is a flawed study. And when we look at the ingredients of some of those kibbles, a lot of the times the kibble that causes those issues is filled with legumes. So let's say, like we talked about, we want the first 5 ingredients, in my opinion, to be meat and animal products. And if you only have the first ingredients as meat, let's say chicken, and then all the other ingredients is peas, pea fiber, lentils, split lentils, pea flour, and, etc. If you add all of those, it goes way ahead of the meat percentage. Which that means that the meat that is supposed to provide taurine for your dog, for the heart, is lacking or it's very low. And then it can cause DVM. There are some kibbles that can cause it more than others. And I have the list here, and we're going to speak about it. There has only been a couple of reported cases from those kibbles. That's kind of what I found online. But there might be more because some people just don't report it. Because in my opinion, it might not go through, or you have to provide a lot of information for the people to actually put it on their reports. So here's all the kibbles. I'm going to list them out right now. You have Akana, Signature, Taste of the Wild, For Health, Earthborn Holistic, Blue Buffalo, Nature's Domain, From, Merrick, California Natural, Natural Balance, Origin, Naturals Variety, Nutri-Score, Nutro, and Rachel Ray Nutrish. So as you can see, if you looked at some of the kibbles, you would see that they have a lot of legumes. It might have changed by now, they might have changed the ingredients, but this is what I found myself. So as you can see from all the studies, even if you look at yourself online, DCM is mostly genetic. It's not caused by grain-free diets. And if you avoid kibble with legumes as the first few ingredients, you have a higher chance of having a healthy dog than a dog that can have DVM. So that's everything in this video. I hope you really enjoyed this video. And if you want any videos of a similar content, just leave a comment below. I read all of the comments, and thanks so much for watching. Bye.